Mission Impossible has been a solid action thriller movie franchise from the beginning. I'll always have a soft spot for the first one, but I think Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, and Fallout are just superb films back to back. They kind of form an unofficial trilogy in a way. They work really well together, and I think those three movies were the high point of the franchise. They were released between 2011 and 2018. Dead Reckoning Part 1, released in 2023, wasn't great. It was a pretty good movie, though. I did enjoy it. But I think they were too reliant on CGI in some of the action scenes, and there were some great moments in there. But fundamentally, the central conflict is the film's weakness. A MacGuffin hunt for two parts of this cruciform key, plus a bit of a mustache-twirling villain that I just didn't know why we should care about. And an AI threat that's too abstract to fully get invested in. But the cliffhanger left me interested in seeing how it was all going to work out for The Final Reckoning. Dead Reckoning also didn't do as well as they would have hoped for at the box office, bringing in $571 million, a good deal less than the $824 million of its predecessor, Fallout. Well, the trailers for The Final Reckoning have looked great, and it looks like there's going to be a solid send-off for the character of Ethan Hunt. But will it be enough of a farewell for the series? Reviews have been a bit mixed, mostly good, I will say, but I'm also seeing a fair few reports that give me pause. There's a few reservations in there that concern me a little bit. I do have a feeling, and I haven't seen the film, but I have a feeling that from what I've heard, The Final Reckoning is probably going to be similar quality to Dead Reckoning. That's what I'm getting anyway. This article is from The Standard, standard.co.uk. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning receives mixed first reactions. The eighth and possibly final installment of the Tom Cruise-led action spy films hit cinemas worldwide May 21st. The critics have had their say on Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning and largely seem divided. Critic David Baldwin declared Tom Cruise has done it again in his enthusiastic write-up, saying, "Best to take blood pressure meds before watching Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning because once the insanity starts, it doesn't stop. It's exceptionally entertaining with pulse-pounding stunts that will leave you gasping. Tom Cruise has done it again." US-based critic Eric Hardman was here for the action, but more critical of the other aspects, writing, "The Final Reckoning is very complicated, less action-heavy than you may expect. In many ways feels incredibly bloated. Exposition is handled better, and when the action is happening, it's jaw-dropping. Some really high highs, but some really low lows." That's interesting. What I've heard is that there's a lot of exposition in this film. And, there's a lot of explaining of plot points, and also a long runtime of 3 hours. Now, the action scenes are supposed to be epic, really incredible, but it sounds to me like maybe they tried too much with this one and sacrificed a lot of story in favor of action set pieces. I do look forward to watching it and doing a full review next week. This film is among the most anticipated summer movies for me, along with Superman and F1. The article continues. Meanwhile, Andrew J. Salazar of Discussing Film outright said that he didn't really enjoy the film, explaining it's got Macquarie's best and worst tendencies, i.e. stunning visuals bogged down by an overtly complex script that introduces so much that goes nowhere. Obviously feels like they were filming this without a script. David Elric of IndieWire seemed on the same page, surmising The Final Reckoning is dull and dysfunctional in a way I didn't think this franchise was capable of. That's not positive. Set pieces are obviously incredible, but as someone so supportive of Cruise's crusade to save the movies and whatnot, this was a massive heartbreaker. Let's move on now to another source. This article is from yahoo.com. Mission Impossible 8 reviews result in series' lowest Rotten Tomatoes score since 3. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning recently debuted on Rotten Tomatoes with an 88% score. While still extremely high, the film score would be the lowest in the series since 2006's Mission Impossible 3. Well, Mission Impossible 3 is a pretty great film in its own right, so I'm not too disheartened about that. And of course, it's still too early days to be too focused on the Rotten Tomatoes score because only a few critics have actually seen the film. When we get general audience reviews, we'll have a better picture of just how good the film really is. It says, despite the lower score, the general response to the last installment in the legendary series is largely positive. So here's some positive reviews here. USA Today's Brian Truitt praised the film, saying that fans couldn't ask for a better death-defying, free-falling, edge-of-your-dang-seat send-off. Vanity Fair's Richard Lawson called the film a worthy send-off of a finale and said it might not reach the highest peaks but still delivers. So again, not completely a 10 out of 10 there. Variety's Owen Gleiberman was equally positive, saying the film is still good enough to remind you how much fun it is when something is truly at stake in a high-flying, twisty-plotted, solemnly preposterous popcorn movie. The New York Times' Manhola Dargis called the movie flat-out ridiculous, but a good example of a blockbuster at its most highly polished. Coming Soon's Jonathan Sim also praised the film, calling it an unforgettable, stunning blockbuster that doesn't reach the peaks of the franchise, but it's still tons of fun. So it does sound to me like there's positives, there's praise, but there's some caveats there. If you crowdsource enough reactions there, you can get a sense of what the film is like. And I do have a feeling that it's going to fall somewhere in the Dead Reckoning kind of vibe. Good, not great. I do think that, as I say, Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation and Fallout are the absolute height of the franchise. And it doesn't sound like their quality is going to be matched by this film. Nevertheless, I can't wait to see it. There's also been some speculation as to whether this really will be the final Mission Impossible movie, or maybe they'll do a final reckoning. Maybe they'll do another one. I think that all comes down to just how profitable this film is. If it's another Dead Reckoning, and it kind of underperforms, or it's just kind of middle of the road at the box office, like if it doesn't make very close to $1 billion, it's got to make Fallout numbers, at least. If it doesn't, I suspect this really will be the end of it. And I think, to be quite honest, this franchise does need to end. And Tom Cruise is a guy who really does care about the quality of the films he makes, and he just makes non-political crowd pleasers. As a result, his brand, his films have garnered a lot of positive sentiment and goodwill towards them. And I think people really appreciate that, his commitment to quality action movie filmmaking. But I also think he's probably not the kind of person who's going to make a movie for the sake of it. Even if it's not the best film in the franchise, hopefully it's a satisfying send-off for the characters and for the story of Ethan Hunt. And if it achieves that, if it's an enjoyable movie and it gives us closure for the characters, if Ethan Hunt's story arc is complete, then hopefully they leave it there and don't drag it on for another one. Walk away and leave people satisfied that the story is over. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Please hit that like button, share this video. Every share helps the channel. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.